Body Punch podcast. My name is Naz. This weekend, we have a super exciting fight featuring Pedro Munhoz versus the veteran Frankie Edgar. This is Frankie Edgar's first fight in the bantamweight division. He's facing Pedro Munhoz, who's sneaky, strong in the striking department and amazing in the grappling department. Frankie Edgar, like I said, first fight in the bantamweight division, but he's been in the sport for a pretty long time now. Frankie Edgar comes with years of experience, years of fighting larger men in the higher weight divisions, fighting at 145, fighting at 155, always giving up that reach, always giving up that length. And most of the times, while in the cage, giving up that weight. Frankie Edgar knows how to fight bigger and longer guys. But how is he going to deal with fighters in the bantamweight division? Right now, he's going to face Pedro Munhoz, who's been looking devastating at the moment. He's been knocking people out with devastating fashion. One of his last fights was against Cody Garbrandt, and it gave us a good idea of how confident Pedro Munhoz is in his hands. He was fighting one of the slickest boxers in UFC currently, in Cody Garbrandt. Cody Garbrandt, what he's done to past fighters, obviously, some people may say that Cody Garbrandt is on a slide. But what Cody Garbrandt is capable with his hand speed is tremendous. But Pedro Munhoz believed in himself and went toe-to-toe with Cody Garbrandt. At the time, Cody Garbrandt was regarded, and still is actually, because of his knockout win just recently. But at the time, we knew that Cody Garbrandt was amazing with his hands. Slick boxer that had devastating power, with amazing knockouts in the bantamweight division, which is not really known to have powerful strikers in it. Now with the new crop of fighters in the division, we're seeing the power coming in. We see fighters that are cutting a lot more weight and using their striking abilities to knock people out. Cody Garbrandt is one of those people. Pedro Munhoz baited Cody Garbrandt into a striking battle. They went toe to toe, going blow for blow. Pedro Munhoz was really confident in his chin, and he was so confident that he went against Cody Garbrandt, and he knocked him out in the first round, which is amazing to say for the person who we all regarded as a grappling savant, someone that if you got to the ground with him, you thought it was game over. But he added this another dimension to his fighting style. He added the fact that you got to be worried about him while standing on the feet now. Which just adds that other layer, like I said. no matter where you take Munhoz in the fight, you take him on the ground, you go into a striking battle with him now, you're always worried about either getting choked out or knocked out now. And this is an amazing test for a person like Frankie Edgar, the veteran coming to the lower weight division. There's many questions that I want to ask. And I want to ask these questions because I want to know how Frankie Edgar is going to be at bantamweight. It's not really heard of to have someone so late in their career move down in weight. We usually see fighters move up in weight. But Frankie Edgar was giving up so much size in the 155-pound and 145-pound weight division that everybody thought it was inevitable that he would go down to bantamweight. But in many interviews that I listened to, you could tell that Frankie Edgar had a chip on his shoulder. He didn't want people to tell him what to do. He didn't want people to tell him that he can't win at the higher weight divisions. In one interview I was listening to, Frankie Edgar said that he doesn't want to show his children that he's giving up by moving down in weight. So basically, to reiterate that, Frankie Edgar just felt like if he went down in weight, he'd be giving up. But now I think what happened was that after the string of losses that he was on, he just felt that it was right for him to move down in weight. At the end of the day, his body is just right for this weight division. He's not losing much size with anybody aside from the taller ones like O'Malley. But O'Malley is kind of a freak in the division. A person that's 5'11", almost 6 foot, making 135 pounds. It's not really heard of. But Frankie Edgar knew that the average in the weight division is at the same size as him. So that gave him confidence. Now, is he going to be able to destroy everybody in this weight division? I think that we really will find out on weighing day. How sucked in will Frankie Edgar look? I saw some comparison photos between Frankie Edgar at 155 and Frankie Edgar at 145. There was a stark difference. Frankie Edgar at 155 still had some fat around him. Obviously, I don't believe that's his natural weight division at all. At 145, he was a little bit more lean. He was a lot lean. But at 135, how will his body adapt to that? Will he be super sucked in? Will he not have any fat on him? Will he look like Conor McGregor at 145? We'll find out. But this does happen to a lot of fighters. We see Pedro in Bellator going from heavyweight to light heavyweight. He's doing it in a smart way, doing a string of fights in the heavyweight division and not going back and forth. Because him and his team know that jumping back and forth between weight divisions is one of the hardest things that you can do. Because you gain a lot of weight, And then you have to lose that same amount of weight to get into the lower weight division. I think this fight being canceled gave a real edge to Frankie Edgar. And the reasoning behind that is because it gave some more time for Frankie Edgar to figure out the perfect way for him to get to 135. He says that the weight's flying off. But at the end of the day, it's that last few pounds that's really going to affect a fighter. That last few pounds will make or break you. And who knows how Frankie Edgar's body has adapted to eating whatever he wants. At the end of the day, for most of us, 155 doesn't sound like much. But for Frankie Edgar, he was eating chips and pizza and drinking all the sodas he wanted. He was living the life. But now he has to be disciplined. I have no doubt that Frankie Edgar can be disciplined. If you hear about some of the workouts that Edgar does, he's a savage, running crazy hill sprints, lifting weights. But again, will his body be able to adapt and make it down to 135? It's weird to say because of how small Frankie Edgar is. If you really think about it, would Frankie Edgar have extended his career as a champion if he went down to 135? Who knows? But I think he would have. Frankie Edgar hasn't slid that much, in my opinion, when it comes to his skills. But he may have been able to extend his career as a championship level fighter if he would have moved to bantamweight a lot earlier. I think that Frankie Edgar was just stuck in an era. He was stuck in the era where fighters just fought at whatever weight division that they wanted to. They didn't really cut that much weight. At the time, a lot of fighters took IVs and there's a bunch of stuff going on. And they could fluctuate. And without that, who knows how not being able to take all those supplements or IVs and whatnot affected Frankie Edgar. Maybe now with a proper nutritionist and minding all of his P's and Q's, he'll be able to make it down to 135 properly. At the end of the day, all this talk about weight cutting, it really makes me, it kind of makes me sad. Because I love to say, I'm the type of person that loves to say, fight at your natural weight division. Fight wherever you feel comfortable. But now I'm saying, Frankie Edgar, come down and weight. You should have come down earlier in your career. But if we're going to keep on fighting the way that we do, with people cutting a crazy amount of weight, Sean O'Malley comes to mind, and I bring his name up again because he is fighting in the bantamweight division. He cuts a crazy amount of weight just to get that advantage. There's a bunch of fighters that I could talk about that cut that weight just to get that advantage of height and length. Once we figure out the best way to do it, and I can't wait until that time comes, because it's going to help a lot of fighters. Look at Cody Garbrandt. Cody Garbrandt was having kidney issues, and now he's cutting to 125 to fight Figueiredo. That's scary stuff. That's super scary stuff. I remember a story a little while ago, maybe it was like 3 years ago. Conor McGregor, I believe, just fought Eddie Alvarez. I might be mistaken, but he just came off a fight, and Conor McGregor was sitting in the crowd of a regular fight. It was some fight in Ireland, and he watched a man die in the ring. We saw a couple years ago a boxer passed away. Both of those had to do with drastic weight cuts. So even though I bring up these stories, Frankie Edgar still is going to be, if Frankie Edgar is able to keep the speed and the power that he somewhat possessed at the higher weight divisions, and I say somewhat because he's not known for his power, he's known for his speed. But maybe that speed was due to the fact that he was a smaller man facing bigger people. That's often the case. But if he is able to keep that speed and also have the mental fortitude to be able to say to himself that, hey, I fought bigger guys, I've taken bigger hits, this is nothing to me. If he's able to keep those two things, he's going to be a monster at bantamweight. And this might set a trend for a lot of fighters to come. This is a great test. Pedro Munhoz is no joke. He's beaten some of the best in the division. And he'll light you up on the feet, like I said, and he'll light you up on the ground. This is a great benchmark to find out where Frankie Edgar is. Now, these fights are really interesting. Taking what I just said, great benchmark for Frankie Edgar. But if Pedro Munhoz loses, that gives us a great idea of where Frankie Edgar was. But if Pedro Munhoz loses, like I just said, we won't really know if Frankie Edgar was amazing or if Pedro Munhoz is just not up to that caliber. If Pedro Munhoz wins, then we don't know if it's Pedro Munhoz that actually fought someone who is a real contender or someone that's just getting really old in age and not able to fight at a lower weight division. These fights are tricky, and we're seeing them more and more, where someone comes in from another weight division. They might be ranked, they might be unranked, whatever. We just don't know if that person coming from the other weight division just can't hang with the weight division that they're moving to, or if the person in the weight division is just not good enough to face the new guy. These are tricky fights. You know, and the thing is, MMA math is always the most interesting. One person could beat, like, you know, Pedro Munhoz beat Cody Garbrandt. But does that mean that if Frankie Edgar beats Munhoz, does that mean that he can beat Cody Garbrandt? Maybe. Maybe not. It's a coin flip. But I think this is going to be a great fight. Can't wait to watch it. And it's a great timing that it happened, because without this fight, this card, it really needed this fight. We got Ovince St. Preux on here versus Alonzo Menafield. That's going to be a great fight. Those guys can bang on the feet, and if Ovince St. Preux gets it on the ground, he might get his OSP choke. Yes, I am naming it that, as everybody is. But yeah, I mean, those two fights are the ones that I'm going to be looking forward to watching, and it's just great to see some of your heroes come back and make a run. If Frankie Edgar can come back, beat Pedro Munhoz, get a string of fights, it's just great to see your heroes. Frankie Edgar, I would call him one of my heroes. And it was just due to the fact that he mentioned himself that he was fighting the smaller guys. I mean, he was fighting the bigger guys and beating them bad. He was a killer. And I just hope that he comes back and gets a string of wins. Imagine if Frankie Edgar could fight for a UFC belt. Frankie Edgar versus Petr Yan? Oh, God. I would have never thought that I would be saying that in 2020. Let alone if Frankie Edgar gets a string of wins, it would be in like maybe 2021. But this is a great fight. Love talking about it like I always do. And I'll talk to you guys soon. All right. Bye.